So today I'm going to be teaching you about raw meat quality and why it doesn't matter as much as you might think. Before we continue though, I want to mention that yesterday I debated the one and only Vegan Gains on my live stream. And listen, I've never done a debate before, so Vegan Gains kind of ran circles around me, but either way, he just soyed out the entire time. But let me just say, Face IQ came in and saved the motherfucking day like the Avengers.
On to somebody straight in front of him, can't answer a simple fucking yes or no question, fucking lies. Does that seem like a good fucking debater to you?
But yeah, Face IQ made him totally crash out. But anyways, let's get to the video. Now, I want to make it clear that with certain meats, meat quality does actually matter, and I'll get into specifics later in the video. However, I want to make one thing abundantly clear. Meat is always safer in the raw form. Cooking does not destroy toxins. In fact, it does the opposite. When you cook meat, it makes any toxins that might be in the meat more bioavailable. The majority of toxins in food, such as heavy metals, stick to the raw fat in the meat. And your body isn't stupid, so your body will not digest these raw fats with said toxins in them. This is why I do not worry whatsoever about my raw milk being stored in plastic, because the plastic will stick to fat cells and the body will not digest it. So you are not being exposed to any microplastics whatsoever when you drink milk out of plastic. However, this does result in a small loss of nutrients. With raw milk, it's about 7 to 8%. The reason why is because the body won't digest these fat cells that have the toxins stuck to them. Augenis von der Planitz did a study on animals with fish. As you might know, every single fish in the ocean is polluted with heavy metals. Every single one. There is no exception. What he did is he analyzed the heavy metal content in a serving of fish, and then he gave this serving of fish to two different groups of animals. One group of animal was fed cooked fish. The other group of animal was fed raw fish. After feeding them this meal, he analyzed their stool samples, and he found that in the cooked meat animals, only about 2 to 3% of the original heavy metal content could be found in their fecal matter. In the second group of animals, he found that 97 to 98% of the original heavy metal content could be found in their fecal matter. What this means is that the raw meat animals only digested about 2 to 3% of the heavy metal content in the fish, and the cooked meat animals digested 97 to 98% of the heavy metal content. And this is because of what I mentioned earlier. When there is a toxin in food, it will bind to fat cells and your body will not digest these toxic fat cells. It'll just pass right through you. This is also why if you ever get extremely low quality milk, it can give you straight diarrhea because the fat cells are storing toxins and your body is not going to digest these toxins. So it's just going to go straight through you. When you cook something, you break down the cell walls and allow things that are in the cell walls to escape. This is why when you cook something, you expose yourself to even more toxins. I'm going to say this again. Every single meat is healthier and safer in a raw form. Any meat that is poisonous when raw will poison you even more when cooked. The only meat that is unsafe to eat raw is any meat that has been poisoned. Any meat where the animal was given a load of you know that thing I can't talk about on YouTube? Or if the animal, for example, a wild deer, was feeding on radioactive sludge, which often happens in America. You guys remember that train spill in Pennsylvania that happened like a year or two ago? Well, I personally know a guy that ate wild deer that lived around that area, and he ended up getting food poisoning for about 12 hours. The reason why is because that deer was poisoned with highly radioactive substances. He actually ate this meat raw, and other than about 12 hours of liquid diarrhea and a slight fever, he was completely fine. If he had cooked this meat, he could have potentially died. We can see this plenty with seafood. If you look up online, like on Reddit, you'll find tons of stories of people eating cooked salmon and becoming sick as fuck. Now, I highly advise against eating salmon of any kind, and I have a good video on that on my YouTube channel, why you shouldn't touch salmon with a 10-foot pole. But even though salmon is extremely contaminated nowadays, majority of people that eat raw salmon don't really notice anything. The thing that pisses me off so much is when people cope while eating like a cooked McDonald's patty or a cooked Burger King patty. They're like, this meat is low quality, so I need to cook it. It's pure cope. You just want to eat cooked meat, bruv. Cooked meat is inherently more dangerous than raw meat. Every single time. There is never a point where you need to cook your meat. And another thing that really pisses me off is when people say, I don't eat raw meat because the meat I get isn't high quality. Bruv, if anything, you should eat your low quality meat raw and cook your high quality meat, if anything. And this particularly applies to factory farmed animals. If you are going to eat a factory farmed animal, you sure as hell want to make sure that you are eating it raw. Otherwise, you are exposing yourself to a load of toxins. And now listen, some people might say, oh, what about the PUFAs? What about the polyunsaturated fatty acids? And yeah, it's true that factory farmed animals will have a higher polyunsaturated fatty acid content, usually about 2 to 3 times more than grass-fed / pasture raised animals. However, polyunsaturated fatty acids aren't inherently bad for you. The only reason they get this rap is because of vegetable oils. Vegetable oils, hydrogenated vegetable oils in particular, are undeniably horrific for your health. There's literally nothing worse you can consume in your diet than hydrogenated vegetable oils. However, these vegetable oils aren't bad because of their polyunsaturated fatty acid content. They're bad because they literally turn into plastic in your body, clog your arteries, give you heart disease, give you complete and total metabolic dysfunction. And because of their extremely high polyunsaturated fatty acid, the polyunsaturated fatty acids have gotten a bad rap. Now, it is true, cooked / processed polyunsaturated fatty acids are bad for you. This is why it is especially important to eat your meat raw, because these excess polyunsaturated fatty acids will be passed through your stool undigested. The body is able to get rid of excessive vitamins and minerals and any kind of compound that it doesn't need via your detox systems if it is in a raw form. We can see this with vitamin A. Cooked vitamin A or synthetic vitamin A is just straight up a toxin. Every single documented case of vitamin A toxicity is with either cooked vitamin A or synthetic vitamin A. This is because when you cauterize a compound, the body has a significantly harder time removing excessive amounts of it. And another thing to think about, the meat you're buying is lean as fuck either way. Like, people worry about the fat content in meat. The amount of fat you get from whole cuts of meat you buy from the store is completely minimal. And if you are worried about the fat content, you can always cut it off and supplement with butter. And unless you are getting specific cuts from a butcher, there's never going to be enough fat on the steak you buy from the store. Now, I will say though, if you are eating low quality meat, it is a good idea to cut the fat off, but not because of the higher omega-6 content. It is because animals store toxins primarily in their fat. And even though you don't digest the majority of these toxins, you are exposing yourself to toxins and you are exposing yourself to essentially rancid fats. If you eat low quality animal fat, a large amount of it, you will probably get liquid diarrhea. And the reason why is because there are toxins in it and the body doesn't want to digest it, so it's going to make you pass it out whole. And now I want to mention something. I actually recorded this video like 2 days ago, but my mic didn't pick up any audio. In that video, I ate the lowest quality meat I could possibly think of, which happened to be like the really shitty factory farm tortured animal pork that I could find at Walmart. And it's funny, I've had people say, oh my god, eating raw meat from Walmart is crazy. Walmart actually has good ass meat, like really good quality meat if you look around. However, this isn't an example of that. This is shitty low quality pork that I am eating in this video right here. And this was filmed 2 days ago, and here I am, alive and well with no illnesses. I didn't get any kind of bad reaction from the pork. I just ate my pork and here we are. But anyways, now's a good time to mention that meat quality does actually matter in certain circumstances. Number one, which I already touched on, is fat. Any kind of fat you're eating should be of the highest quality, otherwise it will not digest properly and you will be exposing yourself to some toxins. The amount of toxins in muscle meat is basically non-existent. However, since animals store toxins in their fat cells, there will be toxins in them. This is especially true for 2 organs in particular: bone marrow and brain. When you are eating bone marrow and brain, it is especially important they are of highest quality, because any kind of or bad things the animal was exposed to will be in their bone marrow and brain. The number one food I most commonly see people get food poisoning from is bone marrow, because if you eat the bone marrow of a very sickly animal full of toxins, you will get sick as fuck. Doesn't matter if you cook it or eat it raw, because it is so full of toxins, the body can't really do anything about it, because even though you only digest 2 to 3% of the toxins, if it is a disgustingly high amount of toxins, that 2 to 3% can still fuck you up. Now, I haven't seen anyone get sick from brain, but I think the reason for that is that everyone I've ever seen eat brain gets it from an extremely high quality source. Because when it comes to like factory farmed animals, they just toss the skull in the trash. So you couldn't even really get low quality brain if you really wanted to try. Now, the second example where meat quality matters a lot is organs. Now, organs aren't designed to store toxins, but when an animal is filled with toxins, these toxins do build up in their organs, particularly the liver. If you look at the liver of a factory farm cow versus a grass-fed cow, it is night and day. This is because the liver of a factory farm cow gets extremely diseased and full of toxins, and you do not want to be eating that. So do make sure you get organs from the highest quality, healthiest animals possible. Now, the third and final example where meat quality really matters is with fish. Particularly, you want to avoid farmed fish. And the reason why I say this is because farmed fish is fed some really heinous shit. Farmed fish are fed with formulated pellets, which basically consist of just straight plastic and vegetable oil. Their feed is also often contaminated with a bunch of toxins, for example, dioxins, which are severely toxic compounds. Since these farm fish are really sick, they're also often injected with preservatives, and they're also injected with food dyes, particularly salmon. Every single farm salmon that is pink has been injected with a synthetic food dye. There's also other various toxins that fish are exposed to, and way too many toxins accumulate in this fish to the point where even if you eat it raw, you will mess yourself up. So in conclusion, raw meat is always safer than cooked meat. Quality doesn't matter that much for raw, lean, land animal muscle meat. Quality does matter for fat, organs, and fish. But yeah, that's it for today, y'all. I'm going to be having a group call on my school today at 4 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. I highly recommend joining my school at only $19 a month. They let me talk about anything I want whatsoever, including the So, hey, I'll see you on there. And if you're unable to join, I'll see you tomorrow.